Good evening, everybody. Today I'm in conversation with Vidhie Mukerjea, and you are watching us on Times Litfest. This is a great platform to be on, and I'm honored to be part of this wonderful initiative. Vidhie is a young author who has written her memoir, and at the very tender age of 18, she was forced to begin her journey in the Dante's circle, wherein when she came back from school, she saw her mother get arrested. Now, what followed was a ghoulish media scrutiny, and it was so traumatic that Vidhie retreated into her shell. Now, in her book, Devil's Daughter, she has penned her trauma with a maturity which is way beyond what I would have expected from a young woman of her age. And frankly, with the Devil's Daughter are the two innocuous words where I would like to start today. First of all, hello and good evening. And I'd like to ask you, what was the thought that went behind the title of the book, Devil's Daughter? And what does it personally mean to you? Does it hold any meaning? And why did you decide on this title as a book? Because it's very, very interesting. And as a reader, I know that were I to go into a bookshop and I see this title in front of me, I would pick it up to know more about it and behind what went behind the title. So would you like to tell us something about that?
Yes, first, Dr. Harshali, thank you so much for having me on here. As you said, it's a real honor to kind of be on a platform such as this. And secondly, yes, about the two words, Devil's Daughter, kind of merging together, I've kind of recently I've come to realize that many people viewed this title as unsettling. And I understand why people would think that, but for me, the title really bears quite a lot of significance, because when the two words kind of came together, it was so special because my instant thought, it didn't go to any specific person, or thing. And I think most people, when they hear these two words and they see the title of this book, would assume the title relates to someone specific. But in my life, it felt more like a metaphor to me. I felt like I was the devil's child, and the devil being where I come from, which is the society, the law, and the media, and ultimately my own self.
Well, whatever whatever I've thought about it while I was preparing for the interview, I was myself thinking that how deep and how layered that title itself is. Tell me, Vidhie, were you always aspiring to be a writer, or was this something like a cathartic experience that is why you wanted to write the book?
No, I mean, not at all. If I were to tell, I think, 20-year-old me that I'm going to write a book in 3 years, I would have just kind of laughed it off in disbelief. And I was never really an academic in school, but I think as I grew older, specifically the last 6 years since my parents went in, I learned a lot about communication, and what I understood is that language is almost, it's like a gateway to communication,
Yeah.
And many people, they learn the art of language through books. So for me, I really learned how to communicate is through like my traveling and understanding different cultures in depth. So talking to the people that I met and just even observing my own mind, even though there was a language barrier with some people, I learned a lot about language, even just conversing by like myself. So before I wrote the book, I didn't really have much kind of faith and confidence that I would be able to do justice to it. But once I started writing, essentially just flowed through like seamlessly, and it's like I was talking to my own laptop or like my own self. And I think each chapter got better. And it just made me realize what a passion I have for like communication and just through different mediums. So, I mean, hopefully I don't think this will be my first book.
No, of course not. So you were talking about traveling, and that means you must have traveled widely. Tell me, Vidhie, while during your travels and during the time that you the traumatic time that you went through and while you were writing the book. What do you think, according to you, is the biggest challenge that women in our society face?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm certainly not an expert on this huge topic, but in my view, I truly believe that we need to ensure that women, especially in our country, are given, priority in kind of all walks of life. In particular, education. I mean, starting from primary to secondary and then further education. So I believe that we need to kind of secure laws that help women, secure their employment. I mean, it's important that women must be seen as an important, part of the overall workforce in our country today. Like only recently did I find out that I think women were being allowed into like male dominated institutions like the army and the National Defense Academy. I mean, it should have been done years ago. So realistically, I think we need to move beyond this whole representation feminism setup that there is, where you just have a female in a company kind of to show that you're encouraging feminism. In our corporate boardrooms, they're devoid of women directors. There should be laws that enable women to be there in equal numbers. I think we need to educate, and that it falls down to education. So for me, I think a big challenge that I feel as a woman, especially in this country, is that, I feel we're so underwhelmed. Like we're always the second option to a man, and we just aren't given enough credit. And like, it's like if we take one step out of line, all hell breaks loose. The media and the country feel that it's okay to completely shame us. I mean, even when this whole case broke out with me, I wasn't at fault. I mean, I knew I wasn't at fault at the start, but I was just a byproduct. But through the years, all of that got confused because I was under so much scrutiny through the media. And, it really made me wonder, like, if I was a son or if I was a boy, that, if I was a son of my mother, like, would the same thing have happened to me? I mean, I don't think so.
So I'm going to take what you just said, I'm going to take it a little forward and ask you that what role did social media play during the time that you were going through that part of your life? And do you think it was, did it really help you? Did it create more trauma? Did it let you absolve yourself in any way? Or how was that experience of having people, in your face all the time?
Yeah, for me, I think I look at social media as a toxic relationship. It's as much as it's a curse, then it's a blessing. Like it depends on kind of which side of the fence you're on. For me back then, only actually until a few months ago, I was, I looked at it as a complete curse. I mean, it really made me feel so low about myself and just terrible. And today, especially girls, like if we're not aware and careful, like social media is designed in a way where it's kind of creepily taking over your life.
Absolutely.
And you're just, I mean, you're constantly comparing yourself to people, but I think since my book has come out, I've just been painfully aware of the effects of social media. But I find that I can use it to my advantage because I can get my message across to people, expressing myself, communicating through these platforms. And lastly, I would just say that social media is an immensely powerful kind of force. Like with all other platforms, one has to be very alert and aware about the psychological effects that it can have on you.
And so what was your mind space when you were writing the book? Because you would have had to relive every little thing that, while you're doing the first draft, you're just writing. You're not really planning so much or plotting the chapters, etc. I mean, I assume that when you were writing, about whatever you went through at that point of time and whatever was happening around you, your observations, whatever you absorbed at that point of time, maybe what your subconscious was watching and seeing, it would have been it would have been difficult to relive that. And that is what I would, when I put myself in your shoes and think, how would I react if I was writing about that time? So what was your mind space like when you were writing the book?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really in the best place at all to begin with when I first started writing this book. I mean, even before that, I think it was just in the middle of COVID when COVID was going on. I
Yeah.
just graduated and I kind of had no idea what I was going to do with my life.
Mm.
And I didn't really have any confidence in myself either. You know, so when I first started writing it, I didn't know like what would come out, but it's like I went into a trance essentially for 2 months.
Yeah.
And it was really tough because there were certain memories and experiences that I completely forgot and shut off. You know, I shut off from them because I didn't want to I didn't even want to think about them. But writing them, I mean, I had to do it because for me to do justice to the book, I had to go through all the painful and unsettling parts of my life, essentially. You know, and it was so beautiful because this is when I discovered what shadow work is. It's where you're kind of accessing the darkest parts of yourself and your shadow self, and you learn how to kind of understand and work with the repressed and uncomfortable parts of yourself, you know. So I mean, it was a true blessing in disguise that I had to go through all of that.
So the realization was in hindsight, once you'd written the book, or was it while you were writing that you were realizing that I am actually addressing everything that I didn't want to, or with whatever I had repressed? Was that realization, while you were writing the book, or was it once you had written it and once you reread it, and how you go through the draft and you say, oh my God, how did I come up with all this, and how did I remember all this? Was it like that, or was it throughout while you were writing you suddenly realized that this was helping you in some way?
Yeah, so I think it came in bits because just before that, right, about 2 years before I wrote my book, I was in a really dark place in my life. And because for the first 2 years, when all of this happened, I was just escaping everything. So I kept, and I thought I was an anomaly. I didn't need to feel anything because for some reason, so I thought I would just carry on with life. But like everything, the bubble bursts. And when the bubble did burst, I really hit hard. And like I had the word, like I hit rock bottom. And essentially, when I was coming up from that, that's when I started getting my first hinge of like panic attacks and anxiety. And I already knew if I was getting anxious and if I was getting panic attacks, that means I'm doing something right, you know? So through my book, I mean, that I already knew, like, I was like, even when I start writing it, I know it's going to be really, really good for me. But oh my God, it was terrible. Like, it was because, I mean, there were just some parts that I forgot completely. You know, there were certain topics that I haven't even faced till today, also. It's still hard for me to kind of even face. I just talk about it with an ease, but I haven't truly accepted it. You know, there are certain topics that kind of just they're just over me. They're just creeping over me more and more until I accept it. And again, like the more cathartic things I do, the more I get into flow states, you know, the more it helps. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I think it was all around. I like what kept me essentially going to write this book is I knew that I was working on myself more.
So I really hope that at that time you had someone supporting you, because I think at that point of time, if you have someone who says that, don't worry, I'm here, and, go through your whatever you need to go through. So who was your greatest support at that time?
At that time, actually, I had my partner who I'm just so grateful to because we were stuck in Hong Kong together because of COVID. You know, we were trying to get back in India, but we ended up getting stuck there for like 8 months. And, he really has seen everything of like from me, like, because both of us, we also met at a very complex time in our lives. So we went through a lot and we grew so much together, and those kind of 2-3 months and the months after that, I was kind of practicing this intense shadow work with myself because it's very intensive. It's you're completely like clouded, you don't know what's going on, you're just so kind of taken in by your flaws because you're actually accepting them for the first time.
Yeah.
So I would just kind of blow up for no reason. I would get angry. And like, he was just there through it all. And like, as you said, he was just holding my hand saying, no, and I have a tendency like to push people away. Anytime you get close, like I would try pushing him away all the time, but he was really, really there for me. So,
That's nice of him.
Yeah, I know. I keep asking him, I'm like, how did you do it?
So tell me, coming back to the book itself, while you were, growing up, while you were going through the time that was the difficult time, I'm going to call it, because I don't think I have anything to compare it with. Um, were there any misconceptions? Were there any biases that that you came across? Were there things that because you were a young girl, you were like 18, 19, you were still in your teens, and I'm assuming that you were protected, and you know how Indian girls are. We really protect our girls and make sure that they don't see the ugly side of life per se, or the bad side of life. And as a mother, I can tell you that while I was reading the book and while I was researching, and I thought, my God, she would have gone through so many things, and it would have been a bombardment of negativity towards her. So how did you deal with that? What was it that you faced at that point of time?
I mean, of course, I went through so much of it. I mean, many, many judgments were passed on to me for kind of no fault of mine, which I only realized very recently, and I think when it all happens in such a great magnitude where the whole country is just discussing your life and your parents and your family, there's no option but to tune it out. I mean, it got to me when I was alone. Like, none of my friends or my family or anyone who passed by me would think that, I'm actually like caring about any of this, because that's how I was. I never let anyone see that vulnerable side of me. But when I was alone, I mean, it really hurt me. I mean, through the years, to the point where now actually it doesn't bother me at all. It toughens you up. It makes you into a stone, and it's unfortunate, but the kind of pros outweigh the cons when you go through it, and
when you reach the other side.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I learned a lot about how the world works and how people just work in general, because the big understanding that I took away was, no matter what you do, there are always people trying to bring you down. No matter how much good you want to do, there's always going to be that person that tries to kind of bring you down, So I kept to myself and I validated myself. It's like, it's me standing in front of the mirror, and me was my biggest cheerleader, apart from my father and my mom as well. And I think just the most simple advice that I have is, in these kind of scenarios, is just you do you.
Yeah. Right. So, would you like to give us, what was to get some context of what kind of, patriarchal mindset did you face? Would you like to share a few, episodes that really shook you? Or if you don't want to do that end, let's go to the other end of the spectrum, and, maybe those episodes which kind of made you feel that, okay, I can deal with this, and, I can stand up on my own again, I can collect myself, and I can rise up from the ashes. So maybe one of whichever you are more comfortable discussing.
Yeah, I think I'll address the first one, because I think that's a really good question. And, I realize as women, we're all going through like a fight within ourselves just to be understood. And that's what I felt throughout these last 6 years. I was just so grossly misunderstood. And it shouldn't be that way. I mean, we shouldn't have to be constantly trying to prove ourselves, And the last 3 years, I mean, it was particularly challenging, but I had great support. I had a lot of strong women and other really helpful like friends, but it was very endearing because of my partner. He's someone that really understands the struggles and kind of listened to my problems.
Yeah.
Actually, it's something very interesting I learned, is that it's like an involuntary hold over us. It's mental, and it's something that's almost passed through generations. It's like there are barriers that make us compare everything. We compare ourselves to our friends. Our parents have a tendency to compare us to our friends. And it's just this vicious cycle. But it's not that men are stronger than us or we are more compassionate than men. Like, through the generations, this pattern, I feel like it's become almost like habitual thinking, but I realize, like, we create our own reality, right? Like, we make ourselves of what we are. So the way like I really pushed through this whole patriarchal kind of mindset is literally having a humble approach in my confidence as a woman.
Wonderful. you want, eventually you do want some kind of teaching to happen, once you come out of such a traumatic experience.
And it's you who teaches yourself, I mean, of course,
Yeah.
there are people that help you along the way, but I keep coming back to this. It's all about you in terms of that. Like, just work with yourself, work with your anxiety, work with your darker self. Like, when you do that, you create art.
And you haven't you?
Right.
So what are you a reader? I'm assuming you are. And are you, should I ask you that again?
I'm actually not. You find this quite funny because I was really not much of a reader as a kid at all.
Okay.
But just before I think I started writing my book, I was kind of given this book Shantaram by Gregory David Roberts.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with that because I mean, like, his writing is just phenomenal. Like, he just takes you there. I think a lot of my writing was just inspired through the way he tells a story, and just because it was so true, it was so raw, dark, and real. I think he's definitely like one of the only big books that I've read in my life.
So any other authors that have inspired you?
Yeah, Eckhart Tolle. I think he's the first one that got me into kind of realizing what the present moment and the actual power of now is, ironically. But yeah, he's really good. Then I thought Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari was also amazing, because it gives you a whole history into who we are. So I think books like that, it's just very like random.
Yeah. No, I think I don't see a point in. I mean, everybody shares different thoughts on this, but even I find if I like the book, I like the author. It's like that. So
exactly.
it's never the other way, like how people would follow an author and say, oh, I've read all of their books. But I tend to kind of pick up a book and I say, oh, I really like this book, and that's why I like the author.
Yeah,
so
I'm in love with Gregory David Roberts.
Yeah.
Like,
right. So is there anything that you are now thinking about writing? Are you in the process, or are you like penning something? Are you plotting? Are you in the sense, are you plotting your next book? Do you want to, take this forward to the next couple of years, or, what are you planning on writing next? Since you said that this is not going to be your only book.
Yes, I think I just fell in love with the whole process of from the first word till like you seeing my actual published book. Like, I think I just fell in love with that whole process. And there was just so much that I didn't write in my first one. There was so much that I haven't been able to kind of talk about, which is primarily to do with traveling and a lot of my experiences. So I would really like to talk about sustainable travel in this, because I found a really unique way of something that I wasn't used to as a kid. When we travel with our parents, it's very different. Even when we travel with our friends, like, our first instinct is, okay, book a flight, stay in a hotel, go to the restaurants, go to touristy sites and see all of that. So for me, like, all of that went out the window when I actually took a backpack and just went with a one-way ticket. And for me, what was so unique, coming back to communicating, is actually living and breathing and eating that, understanding the culture to what place to go. And it opened up everything for me. I mean, that's what taught me. That's what education was for me, essentially. Yeah. I picked up everything I know today just by traveling through different places sustainably and with a budget, So I want to write all of that. I mean, it's all trial and error, right?
Right. So is there a place that that's like taken hold of your heart, that you want to, like all authors, myself included, we have this view and we have this beautiful dream that we want to have a nice room next to maybe the hills or the beach, and we just want to put a table there and write. Is there a place like that? Or
South America.
Wow.
It took me to the next level. I mean, like, it was a year after my university. I was just getting I was in my worst place ever. This was in London, and I think me and my best friend, we just saved up some money. We'd worked in a bar and we just saved up some money, and we decided to kind of book a one-way ticket to South America just with a backpack. Like, we didn't have anything else but a backpack, and we went from hostel to hostel, worked our way around, and we ended up staying there for 4 months. So I think, yeah, it won my heart over.
Wonderful. So I think, I think we all would like to, hear your answer to this question, the next one that I'm going to ask you, that when you are having a hard day, because I don't think an experience like this, a life-changing experience like this, can be so easily crossed over. And even though you might reach a point where you're able to process it in some form or manner, I don't think it stops there. I think it's just part of your life, and you've kind of grown around it, and you're constantly living that memory. So how do you motivate yourself on hard days?
I welcome them. I welcome the tough days, because I have accepted that I will always have good days and I will always have bad days. And actually, I don't even put it and classify it as bad days, because as you so rightly put it, it's a tough day. I mean, I have an approach now where I kind of welcome these days, because I know I'm going to learn something that will probably help me for the following day, or maybe I don't even know. And I mean, although for me to say this, my threshold for tough days is very, very, very high compared to most people, because of the last 6 years. So yeah, I think it's a big mental shift. Like, I literally trained myself now to just almost like I'm probably the only person in the world that says, yeah, I actually don't mind having tough days, because I learn from it.
Oh my God, that's quite deep actually. And I think I'd love to know a little bit more about how you reach the space, because you're like half my age and you've already reached the space where I'm hoping to reach at one point of time. So, so tell us maybe a few pointers.
Right.
I think, how do we reach that stage where we say, okay, it's a hard day, let's move on?
So I mean, a lot of this came because of it's shadow work, right? It's
Yeah.
shadow work it's literally, I think it's magical, and because it's a self psychotherapy. You're doing it with yourself, and it's so intensive. Like, I mean, when I first did this, like, I'll tell you, my tough days that I had were for 4 months continuously. There was a period where I think I didn't stop crying for 5 days straight. I didn't stop. I mean, I didn't even sleep, because it's so, us as human beings, we have two sides to ourselves. We have our shadow self and we have our light self. And our light self is what we see every day, like me talking to you right now, you talking to me. This is our everyday, who we show to other people. Our darker self is the parts of us that are like very repressed, we feel are socially unacceptable to see. And we see glimpses of this when we argue with someone, when we're really upset, when we're angry. And the thing is, we have a tendency to constantly push these things away. We don't want to accept the flaws, because we classify them also as flaws. I mean, flaws even aren't even the right word. It is who you are. You can't be all light. I think that's why I'm able to kind of, it was a very profound kind of time in my life where I was able to understand, okay, the darkness is so important for the light to survive, and it's that balance. It's like yin and yang. And I think through shadow work, it really, like, I'm subconsciously doing shadow work all the time. I'm subconsciously kind of trying to figure myself out all the time. And it can get really, like, it can get stressful sometimes, of course, but at the back of my mind now, I'm always just, I have this approach like, no, 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 you're going to come out amazing. You're going to come out amazing. Because like, when after those 4 days of continuous crying, like, it happens, I just, there's no warning, I suddenly got better, and I felt amazing. Like, I didn't get any panic attacks after that. I mean, even if there are panic attacks that I still feel sometimes coming on, I'm so in control of like my emotions right now that I know how to kind of maneuver them. It's almost you're decoding yourself.
Oh.
So it's beautiful. I mean, I just can't say enough about it, like good things about it, because it's just so good. It changed my life.
So this was before you wrote the book or while you were writing the book?
Yeah,
So
I mean, it was 2020. So yeah, through it, I think just through whilst I was writing my book, because I was going through some really, really dark situations in my head, and I was kind of like reliving certain memories, and I didn't want to write it, I didn't want to think it. So I think I was learning, at the same time, I was really interested in like ancient philosophies. You know, at that point, I was learning about Taoism. And, you know, with one Google search, it leads to another. And then you just go into a whole like rabbit hole. I came across this concept of shadow work. And I downloaded this brochure on how to kind of do it with yourself. And, you know, what I love about it is that you don't do it with anyone but yourself. Like it's your own secret diary, and you have to look at you have to have conversations with yourself. That's essentially it. Like I'm constantly talking to myself in my head all the time.
So I think that has been your learning that we've discovered today, the shadow work, as well as working on yourself rather than having external factors coming and working on you. I think what I understand is that it's about working with yourself.
100%, like very, very much. And then through that, you know, like you start, I think another really important thing that I learned through this whole journey is just you have to embrace your like true and weird self. I mean, we're all a little weird and quirky, and we have to let that part of us shine, you know, rather than be ashamed of it.
So to end this, and because we're seeing the drama that's being played out right now on national television, is there anything that you'd like to, maybe say to kids who are in a similar situation as you, maybe who are going through, tough times in terms of external situations they cannot help, they cannot deal with, they are not responsible for either, but they have to face the backlash of things that are happening around them. So would there be a few things that you'd like to tell them? Because you've really come out, as you said, of the rabbit hole, or you're on your way, certainly. So, would you like to kind of share that here right now?
Yeah, I would just like to tell, you know, people that just try. I know this is not the easiest thing to say, but just work with yourself and have confidence in yourself. You know, always know that you are going to come out of it. Because I mean, for 6 years, I didn't think there was, like, I kept trying to find that light at the end of the tunnel, and I just didn't think there was one. But there really is one, you know, and you might think that you're alone, but there's always people secretly rooting for you. As many people that are kind of actually secretly hoping that you fall, there are people that are rooting for you, and that's what keeps you up, you know. And I think one thing I would really kind of like to point out is that, you know, we spoke about patriarchy and all. Is patriarchy is really toxic for men too, is something that I realize. You know, it's a fight that we're all in. It's not just women, men. It's women succeed, everyone succeed. I mean, it's statistical, you know, when women are in the workforce, it's more of a healthy economy. And more than anything, I think it's our culture in India that need to communicate better through art, through the films that we show, through, you know, the media, through music, textbooks, and ultimately that's education. You know, education isn't just going to school and finishing your degree and then coming out of it and getting a 6-figure salary job. It's so much deeper than that. And just keep trying to find that creative part of yourself, you know, live on the edge. Seriously, go out and just feel uncomfortable. You have to feel uncomfortable. That's the best thing I can tell you to do.
Step out of the circle, huh? Step out of the comfort zone, step out of the circle to feel life, you know, head on.
Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. It was so lovely talking to you, Vidhie. I really, really enjoyed it. And I really wish your book to do, you know, the very best. And I hope everybody takes away, the essence of the book, which is, yes, the story, but also the much deeper layers that you have somehow interwoven into the words, into the spaces that are silent. And I really, really wish all the very best to you. Thank you so much for talking to me and for sharing, your learning with me. Thank you.
So much. It was a really, really good conversation. It's really an honor to speak to you.
Thank you.